Specialization. What danger could this impose on our body? To explain this, I'd first like to talk a bit about diversity. Diversity in a system. What do I mean with diversity in a system? Well, if you watch my video Understanding Form, you would have noticed me talking a lot about system and environment. A system always contains multiple components or structures, and these structures are related to each other. They are working together to respond to their environment. Now, this can be a complex system, meaning something that's not alive, a chair, a couch, a bench, whatever, name it. But it can also be a complex adaptive system, or organisms like plants, trees, birds, humans. They all contain structures, and these structures need to work together. Now, if you look, for example, a chair, which is only made of wood, it can only react to their environment in a very specific way, because the structures are all the same. Well, of course, relatively the same. Now let's say a chair which is made of a bendable metal and wood, and let's say some elastic properties as well. Now we can see complexity increases, and if it is made intelligently, these structures will work together, and this diversity will make it more able to compensate on each other. Let's say there's a certain force which acts upon this structure or the system, and these structures can only react with a rigid resistance, for example, like a wooden chair. Then it can only react in this way. Let's say there are some more elastic properties, then it can also take up this force in this elastic property while also giving resistance. So the more diverse the structures are within a system, the more complex the system is, the more it can compensate. And let's say, for example, one structure breaks or becomes disabled, then it's not too much of an impact on the system as a whole, because the whole can compensate on each other. In a too specialized system, this is different. Let's say something breaks in the wood, and this will immediately impact everything else in the wood, because everything is made out of wood. The whole chair cannot compensate on each other anymore, because it's too specialized. Now, of course, this is only one example, but this principle will layer, and you can see this everywhere. This is why we say biodiversity is so important, because nature can compensate on each other. This cycle, we say as the cycle of life, the more diverse this is, the more it can compensate on each other, work together, and actually be able to absorb impacts. If this biodiversity becomes less and less, then the nature can only respond in less and less ways. It cannot compensate anymore. In other words, the more specialized a system becomes, the more it concentrates on being able to produce a single task. Following this is a narrowing of structures within, to be able to direct the focus on a single task. This loss of diversity means the system has less capacity to compensate on each other, meaning that the system becomes more and more fragile in the process. Now let's take this principle and apply it to a human. When a baby is born, we know the content of its water in the body is much higher than in an adult. In a baby, it's around 70 to 80% water, so that means quite a lot. And then in adults, it's around 60%. So it's significantly more. Now, what does this say? This means that in a baby, the body has yet to build a lot of solid particles. The older we get, the more we are exposed to forces on our outside, the more our body will adapt to these forces. It will create more solid particles, but the downside of this specialization means that the exchange, the fluid exchange, and therefore the freedom communication of the tissues becomes less as well. This is what we see in aging. In aging, generally, of course, this is different with different people and how they live their life, lifestyle, etc. But in general, as we age, our water content becomes less and less. The exchange of tissues becomes less and less. If we break something or injure something, it'll take a lot longer for this to heal because everything slows down. In general, we can observe the longer a system is exposed to a certain environment, the more it will adapt to this environment, which makes it more efficient in this environment. But in the process, our body will become less capable to compensate in general to different environments as well. So let's take this principle again and apply it to training. Of course, we all know training is generally healthy for you. It's a lot better than doing nothing, because if we do nothing, then our body will specialize into doing nothing, which kind of defeats the purpose of being healthy, or what we call being healthy. But let's take this principle and apply it to training. Let's say we have a marathon runner, which only trains for running a marathon. Now, in the long run, we will see this person specialize to become a marathon runner. If I say marathon runner, you might already have a picture of someone in your head. Really slim, really light on its feet, very efficient with going long distances, but very fragile when you put them in a different environment. Let's say someone goes to the gym a lot, doesn't do a lot of cardio, and does a lot of isolated strength training. Now, this person will be really good at doing this isolated strength training, but put him in a different environment and he will become really fragile. So, this being said, for a person that's not too motivated or really passionate about one specific sport or discipline, is it worth it to take is it worth it to spend a lot of hours only doing one sport or one discipline? In my eyes, this is not worth it. In my eyes, if we want to live healthy, if we want to be able to compensate in our body, to keep this fluid exchange high, because remember, the more we specialize, the more we adapt our body to one single task, the less we are able to compensate in different ways. But life is about adapting to different environments. And physically, we can see this as well in our tissues. The more we become specialized, the more we strain our body in a certain way, the more our body is able to exchange information, to communicate in this manner, but less in other manners. So of course there are upsides about specialization. Especially as humans, we are really good at this, working together. One person is really good at doing one thing and the other at doing another thing, and together we can we can work together to get a certain output. But when it comes to our physical body, being a generalist and not a specialist will be really beneficial for our health on the long term. In my eyes, health is freedom in all directions. If we specialize too much, these directions will diminish and we will become more focused on a single direction or a few directions. And this can lead to less compensation of our body and therefore becoming more fragile in the process. So maintaining health is about maintaining as much physical expression as our body is capable. We want to be able to be strong bilaterally. We want to be able to be strong unilaterally. We want to be fluid. We also want to be able to be stable, to be rigid. If we can keep these physical expressions of our tissue, of our body, then this in the long term will keep us healthy as well. But of course, we are humans. We are organisms in this world. We will specialize. We will adapt. We will morph. Let's just do this while being aware of what this means. So let's just morph well. See you in another one.